Welcome to the Lion's Share podcast, where we break down today's most impactful research and bring fresh insights from the academic frontier straight to you.
Yeah.
If you've ever seen a corporate innovation project kind of stall out or maybe fail or launch something that the market just ignored, well, chances are the team was probably spending a bit too much time looking inward.
Yeah, focusing on their own processes, polishing what they already had. Yeah. And look, that inward focus, it's absolutely essential for, operational excellence.
Right.
But it's definitely not enough for real market innovation. So today, we're doing a complete deep dive into the outside world. We're talking about the critical strategies and the specific tools you need for external analysis.
Okay.
And our mission for you, the listener, is really to get how these external reference points are used. They're key for basically 4 crucial outcomes in corporate innovation and entrepreneurship.
4 outcomes, what are they?
Okay, so figuring out if something is actually new, determining novelty, then assessing performance against the very best out there, also evaluating the potential market impact of whatever you're innovating, and finally, picking the better option to actually, pursue.
Got it. Determining novelty, assessing performance, evaluating impact, and selecting the best path.
Exactly.
And we've got some fantastic source material today. It's a synthesis, really, blending that hard practitioner advice, the kind you put straight onto an investor deck with some rigorous academic thinking on the processes themselves.
Yeah, the goal is to distill what you really need to know, to first check if a profitable market segment even exists, and then, crucially, how to aim for real distinction within that space.
Okay, so where do we start? Foundational stuff.
Absolutely. We have to get clear on terms first, because our sources draw this really powerful and, I think, necessary distinction between 2 terms people often just, use interchangeably: competitor research and benchmarking.
Yeah, I think most folks probably assume they're pretty much the same thing. But you're saying if you treat them that way,
yeah,
you could end up just copying the past.
That's the risk, yeah, instead of inventing the future. So competitor research, think of it as the essential starting point. It gives you that baseline intelligence.
Okay, baseline, what does that include?
It focuses mainly on performance measures, the what. Things like profitability, market share, maybe specific product features. Now, it can just become trying to mirror another company, which isn't great.
Right, copying.
But used strategically, competitor research sets the target. It gives you the data you need to even verify a market exists. It tells you, basically, what you have to achieve just to be relevant in the game.
Okay, so research is about setting the floor, the minimum viable target. But that definition, it feels incomplete. Where does it fall short?
It falls short because just hitting that baseline, that doesn't guarantee you'll stick around or lead the market. And that's where benchmarking comes in. It's different.
How so?
Benchmarking focuses on identifying and adopting best practices. It's about how the strategy, the process, the whole aim is continuous improvement, adopting methods that deliver genuinely world-class performance.
Not just average for your industry right now.
Exactly, not just current industry average. And it takes work. It requires detailed data, and often it means partnering up or really digging deep into processes, maybe even outside your direct competition.
Okay, I like that distinction. Research gives you the what to aim for. Benchmarking gives you the how to achieve it, and maybe even leapfrog it.
Yeah.
The sources mention 3 kinds of benchmarking.
Yeah, 3 primary classifications, and they basically define the scope of that how. They help manage how big your investigation gets.
Right.
The first one, and honestly, it's often overlooked, is internal benchmarking. This is where a big company shares and standardizes its own proven best practices across different divisions.
Ah, so looking inside first.
Exactly. Think about comparing, say, the time it takes to onboard a new user in your London office versus your, San Francisco office. You tune up your own engine before looking outside.
Makes sense. You can't really benchmark externally if your own house isn't in order.
Then you move to the more traditional approach. Competitive benchmarking. This is where you evaluate your company specifically against others right there in your industry.
To see how you stack up against the leader.
Precisely. You're trying to figure out what the industry leader's performance targets look like so you can aim to catch up or, ideally, surpass your direct rivals.
Okay, and the third one. That sounds like the one with the real potential for breakthrough ideas. Strategic benchmarking.
That's the really challenging one, but yeah, potentially the most rewarding. Strategic benchmarking forces you to look outside your industry altogether. You're trying to identify and analyze truly world-class performance standards wherever they exist.
Regardless of the sector.
Right. The key insight here is realizing that things customers care about, like satisfaction factors, they're often universal. It doesn't matter what business you're in.
The sources had that great example about wait time, didn't they? Like, a utility customer doesn't just compare their call hold time to another utility.
No way. They compare it to the seamless experience they get from Amazon or how fast their pizza gets delivered. Their expectations are set by the best, period.
So by strategically benchmarking wait times against maybe the best logistics companies out there.
Exactly. A utility gets visibility into best practices that could completely redefine what all customers expect in terms of speed and service, not just service from utilities.
That wider perspective is so crucial for genuine innovation. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Let's move from these sort of established corporate processes to the maybe higher stakes world of startups and new ventures.
Right.
Because for a startup trying to carve out a totally new space or maybe resegment an existing one, that traditional competitive graph, the XY plot of price versus performance just doesn't work, does it?
No, it really doesn't. That model assumes you're in an existing, well-defined category. But when the startup is creating the category or slicing it differently, the whole basis of competition isn't even clear yet.
You're not just competing on price and one other feature.
Exactly. You might be competing at the intersection of like half a dozen different adjacent markets, that old XY graph.
Yeah.
It's totally useless for showing how novel your idea is or where the real opportunity lies.
Which brings us, I think, to our second key term, a tool designed specifically for this messiness, the Petal Diagram.
Ah, yes, the Petal Diagram. It's a really interesting visualization tool. It puts the startup, the new venture, right there in the center, like the sun in a solar system.
Okay, startup in the middle and around it.
Around it, you draw these adjacent market segments as clouds or petals. So think of categories like maybe corporate training, higher education, adult learning skills, whatever applies. These are the existing places where your future customers are currently spending their time and money.
Got it. And the company's already in those petals.
You plot the incumbent companies, the existing players, within their respective petals. So visually, it maps out exactly where a startup needs to steal customers from. It's incredibly helpful for figuring out your first target customer segments, for things like the business model canvas or lean startup. It forces that beachhead decision.
And the practical value here, especially when talking to investors, seems huge. You can scale the petals based on market size, maybe even show funding raised by others in those petals.
Oh, absolutely. You can annotate it to show the private capital raised by representative players in each adjacent market. It becomes this powerful way to have a conversation about the total market potential with VCs.
Makes sense. But you mentioned a catch, a human element.
Yeah, there's this fascinating bit where entrepreneurs using this diagram reported, a real split in how potential investors reacted. Some looked at it and basically said,
"Oh, you're surrounded."
Pretty much. It looks like you're surrounded by all these powerful incumbents. How can you possibly win?
Which, as the source kind of implies, maybe suggests those aren't really venture investors, more like traditional bankers.
Exactly. A true venture capitalist looks at that same diagram and sees an opportunity map. They see the chance to grab customers from multiple, potentially huge adjacent segments. A banker, who's trained to focus on stability and mitigating known risks, just sees a threat map.
That difference, seeing risk versus seeing opportunity, is actually a perfect bridge back to the corporate world, isn't it? Because big established organizations, they tend to lean towards that banker's perspective, that risk aversion.
They definitely do. And that inherent risk aversion has a huge impact on where the resources actually flow inside the company.
So how are the big players using external analysis now? Not just for pitching ideas, but for actually managing their internal innovation portfolios. What's the data show?
Well, the survey data we looked at shows a pretty critical and frankly, slightly worrying shift. We're seeing a definite downshift in how many resources are going towards transformational innovation.
And that's the big stuff, right? Horizon 3.
That's the big, risky, maybe 3 to 5 year bets. Creating entirely new offerings, new markets, the stuff that could drive massive long-term growth.
But it's getting less funding.
Significantly less. Resources allocated to that Horizon 3 work apparently dropped from around 26% back in 2020 to only 18% in 2023.
Wow. Where's the money going instead?
More of it is flowing towards, incremental improvements, adjacent innovations, stuff that feels safer, quicker wins. It seems driven by this sort of fire alarm mentality, reacting to recession fears, supply chain chaos, global uncertainty.
So short-term tactical fixes are winning out over long-term strategic bets.
It looks that way. And innovation leaders, they constantly have to use external analysis, market data, just to fight against this pull towards short-term thinking.
But here's the kicker, right? The internal reality check. When those big companies do fight over the limited innovation budget, the data suggests external competitive threats aren't actually the winning argument.
That is the often crushing truth for internal innovators. The #1 factor, according to the survey, for actually attracting more resources, money, people wasn't what competitors were doing. It wasn't some scary external market shift.
What was it then?
Senior leadership being excited by the vision. That was #1. #2 was showing a demonstrated impact on revenue generation. Competitor actions. Way down the list of what actually unlocks resources.
And that aligns with the biggest internal challenges innovators reported facing.
Exactly. It reinforces that political reality. The top challenges cited: politics, turf wars, and lack of alignment. Over half the respondents, 51.9%, pointed to that. That absolutely swamps things like budget constraints or cultural resistance.
So the biggest problem often isn't the external market opportunity, it's getting everyone inside the building to agree and line up behind it.
That's the battleground. And organizations have had to get creative, setting up specialized units just to cope with this internal resistance to risk. These structures become almost the only way to effectively use external data for truly strategic moves.
Okay, give us those examples again, but maybe frame them specifically as ways to solve that internal political problem using external focus.
Okay, good way to put it. Take MasterCard. They use their Foundry unit, which basically acts as an internal service provider for innovation. It's explicitly designed to tolerate failure.
So it shields the main business from the risk.
Precisely. It de-risks new product ideas across all the uncertainty stages: client market fit, solution uncertainty, commercial uncertainty. By putting that high-risk Horizon 3 work in a separate foundry, they stop a single project failure from kind of poisoning the well for future innovation investment in the main organization. It neutralizes some of that internal political blowback against risky bets.
So that's a structural solution. What about Energy, the utility company? How did they use external benchmarking?
Their approach was more about challenging internal assumptions directly. They used Net Promoter Score, NPS, right? But they didn't just benchmark themselves against other utility companies.
No, they went broader.
Much broader. They benchmarked their service against all the companies their customers interact with regularly. This visible external data forced their internal teams to confront the fact that customers expect service standards set by Amazon or Zappos, not just by another slow utility. It fundamentally challenged that comfortable internal status quo.
Okay, this all kind of leads us to this core tension, maybe even a paradox in innovation theory. If the ultimate goal is true originality, something nobody else has done, then isn't the very act of looking outside, of doing external analysis, inherently limiting? Doesn't just anchor you to what already exists?
Yeah, and we have to grapple with that critique, especially the famous one from Tom Peters. He basically called benchmarking stupid.
A strong word. Why?
His argument was, look, benchmarking typically makes companies launch these huge 5-year programs aiming to be just as good as whoever was considered the best 5 years ago.
So you're always chasing yesterday's leader.
Exactly. He argued it's just a mechanism for imitation, not real originality. His advice was to ignore the benchmarks and instead look at the outliers. Talk to your disgruntled customers, your rogue employees, your friends at supplier companies. That's where the truly disruptive insights hide.
Okay, that's a really powerful critique. If competitor research just guides you to copy the leader, you're doomed to be a follower, right? So given that very valid point, why must a company still engage in rigorous external competitor analysis, even if its ultimate goal is radical, mold-breaking innovation?
It's a great question, and I think the answer lies in realizing that even radical innovation rarely happens in a complete vacuum. It almost always occurs at the intersection of existing, often well-understood disciplines or markets.
You need the context.
You need the context. You need that external data as practical intelligence just to define the space you're about to disrupt. For instance, analyzing your competitors' customer reviews. That tells you exactly where their products are failing, guiding your development beyond their current flaws.
Okay, or understanding their patents.
Right. Understanding their patent filings informs your R&D strategy. It shows you the adjacent technological boundaries, maybe where not to go or where there's white space. You have to know the current rules, the current landscape, even if your plan is to break them.
You need to know the baseline before you can leap beyond it. If you don't do the competitive research, you might just reinvent the wheel. Or worse, build something brilliant that solves a problem nobody actually has.
Precisely. And let's bring it back to that corporate reality one last time. Even the most radical, world-changing vision needs to survive internally first. And what was the top enabler for innovation success again?
Leadership support, getting the bosses excited.
Exactly. And to get that crucial support, your radical idea, however brilliant, still needs a clear, well-benchmarked vision backing it up. You need some form of external analysis that convinces those internal stakeholders that the undeniable risk is actually worth the potential reward. The analysis becomes the language of persuasion.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up for the listener. Key takeaways. You should now have a much clearer, more strategic understanding of the crucial difference between competitor research, which is about establishing that baseline what, and benchmarking, which focuses on continuous improvement through adopting the best how.
Right. And you've seen the utility of a tool like the Petal Diagram, especially for visualizing and segmenting those messy, nascent markets that startups often target.
And finally, we've confronted that maybe uncomfortable but unavoidable reality that corporate innovation battles are often won or lost based on internal politics and alignment, sometimes even more than on the brilliance of the idea or the external market opportunity itself.
Yeah, and the data is stark. Corporate innovation seems to be genuinely throttling back on that high-risk, high-reward, truly transformational work, favoring safer, quicker fixes instead of investing in future market leadership.
Which leads us perfectly into our final provocative thought for you to really chew on. If we accept that the single biggest challenge to innovation success inside big companies is politics and turf wars, and the single greatest enabler is leadership buy-in, then how does a rigorous analysis of external competitive threats using tools like the Petal Diagram or strategic benchmarking become perhaps the ultimate internal tool, the key to securing those vital resources and alignment?
Is it possible that framing the external vision, using that external data, is maybe the only language powerful enough to cut through the internal noise and solve the internal problem?
Something to definitely ponder as you map out your next breakthrough project.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning into the Lion's Share podcast. If you enjoyed today's discussion, share it with a friend and join us next time for more ideas worth talking about. We'll see you next time.